Jack here, owner of Hockey Alley, bringing you back hockey history. Today I got NHL player Steve Hines with me. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing great. Yeah, that's ex-NHL player, but thank you for
I don't like to
keeping
use
me
that.
up to date. Yeah.
I don't like to use that word ex or former. I just, you know, to get there to the NHL is a big accomplishment.
Hear you. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Are you still involved with hockey?
I am up to my eyeballs in hockey. Fortunately, I love it.
That's awesome.
We built a non-profit rink here up in Santa Barbara that I'm fortunate enough to be president of the board of that nonprofit, and then I coach high school and run some clinics for the young kids, and on the board for the travel team. So yeah, my son plays, so I'm in it, and I'm loving it.
That's awesome. Great job you're doing. I want to ask you, so you played high school hockey. Where did you play? What state were you in?
Yeah, so back in the olden days, high school hockey in Massachusetts, where I grew up, was sort of your only option. It was either public high or private high school. We didn't have these layers of juniors and whatnot. It was there, but it just wasn't as prevalent. So I did 2 years of public high school. Had one of the greatest coaches I've ever had. I was very fortunate to have great coaching growing up. And then after 2 years there, sort of the team, a lot of kids graduating, the coach retiring, and then I decided to go and play private school at Lawrence Academy for a couple of years. Same league that Ronick and Amonte were there, and a bunch of other guys of that era who were pretty good players, and that seemed to be where the best hockey was. So yeah, 2 years public, 2 years private.
Yeah, were those the best players you played against? Ronick and Tony Amonte?
Yeah, I was actually. Yeah, we were all in the mix, so they'd throw all-star teams together. I mean, I was playing on teams with them and bantams and stuff, and it was just we'd go up and up north and play some of those Canadian teams, and they'd say, Yankee, go home and play baseball, but then we'd beat them, and that would get them even more angry.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I looked up the stats on your college, and there was a lot of guys who went to the NHL from your college team, which is amazing.
Yeah, we really we had I guess we'll keep it positive. I don't want to mention the fact that we didn't win a national championship, and maybe we should have, but no, it was a great bunch of guys. My freshman year, my first two line mates was Tim Sweeney, who was a senior that year, and he was nice enough to play with us two freshmen, Marty McGinnis and myself, and all three of us, made a pretty good NHL career out of it. Then Billy Guerin joined the team. He's obviously a legend, a USA legend of hockey, and he was just, I don't think college hockey was really, he was almost too big, too mean, too tough to play our style, so he was awesome. Ted Crowley's a defenseman, Greg Brown, a bunch of these guys, and then coincidentally, 5 of us out of the 6 that made it that I played with played on the Olympic team together in '92, and
Wow.
then Billy was the only guy that got cut.
Really?
So,
Awesome.
some crazy stuff.
But that's a quarter of the team making it to the NHL from one college team. That's rare. You just don't see that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we were pretty loaded up. We had just, when I got there, they had just built a brand new stadium. I think we were the first one with the Jumbotron, and, and they had, and Brian Leach had just been there, and Craig Janney, so it was sort of, and had some success and good recruiting and everything else, and it pulled it together. Yeah, we had a heck of a squad. I was there for 3 years, and, those players overlapped. I don't know if Brownie played with Billy Guerin. He came in a little later, but it was certainly some great guys too. Great individuals, people to hang out with, not just on the rink, but outside of the rink too.
Yeah, and then you went to Boston. You were drafted, correct, to Boston?
So I got drafted out of high school. Yeah, back then, at 18. I don't know how it works now, but 18, you go into the draft pool. Bruins picked me up, and so they owned my rights. So 3 years at BC. Then I went off and tried out and made the Olympic team in '92. And then right after that, I think like 6 of us joined the Bruins. It was a crazy year for them too. A lot of guys going through their ranks, and there was Teddy Donato from the U.S. team, myself, Clark Donatelli, and Joey Juneau and Gord Hines from the Canadian Olympic team, and then Glenn Murray at the same time too joined the team. So a bunch of us got thrown into the mix in '92.
Wow, it's a lot of talent, and you played with the talented guys like Ray Bourque and Cam Neely. What was it like to have them on your team?
Well, what was it like me to be on their team. I mean, Ray. So I grew up in Boston. I grew up just outside of Boston, and I don't think I moved until until I got traded or picked up in waivers off of the Bruins. I never really lived outside of the Boston area till I was 30. Wow. So Ray was a legend. He was he was everything. And I, to this day, remember like it was yesterday, pulling on my jersey and looking across the locker room and seeing Ray put on his jersey at the same time. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is it. I made it. It was like, I can't even describe the feeling because, so just to be your hero, your legend, local legend, and then all of a sudden you're putting on the same jersey, and it didn't, sink in until at practice, and even, in the summer times we all get together and skate together, and nobody could touch Ray. Nobody, but everybody knows how great he was, but just individually skilled with the puck and how to control that puck. I mean, the pass, the shot, the skate, every puck. He did not have a weakness in his game. And then he'd outwork everybody at practice. And there's a bunch of guys I played with. The Hall of Fame guys, they're not just good because they're good. They're good because they work as hard as anybody else, and they give as much to the game as anybody else, and they care about it as much as or more than anybody else. So Ray, and then Cam Neely, who's another one of scoring his 50 goals in 50 games on half a leg. Yeah. It was bittersweet when Cam was in the lineup. I played less, so I don't. It was good to have him because he'd score all those goals, but I'd get less ice time. But he certainly was another one of those. It was just, I mean, it's almost mind-boggling how the game ends, and it's like he had another 3 goals. When did he get those? It was like, amazing.
I think he got hurt by Ulf Samuelsson that time.
Yeah, so Ulf Samuelsson was public enemy number 1 in Boston through the 90s. He hit Cam and started Cam on the road to some knee problems, and then eventually the hip is what he retired from. Yeah. But then he came back from retirement and only played he didn't even practice, and he scored 50 goals in 50 games. I mean, he was that good. Wow. And somebody else, we have to mention too is Adam Oates, who I don't know if Cam gets that many goals. He was awesome. He was great, but nobody can do it by themselves. And actually, before Adam, he had Craig Janney there. So it's that perfect mix when you get those kind of guys together, that level of talent. That it's magic. And Oatesy, as much as Cam could shoot it harder than anybody I've ever seen, Oatesy could see the ice and lay pucks out into spaces. And it wasn't, it was the tape to tape that was just, wow, great pass. But then it was just the feel of where to put a puck to make it perfect for a guy, right in his wheelhouse all the time. So on the Cam player was injured, then I'd get out there and get lucky enough to play with Oatesy sometimes. And it was just work hard, get open, go to the blue paint, and tap some in.
Would you say
pretty easy?
Yeah. Would you say it's easier with Adam Oates than say another player? Like you just knew what he was going to do, or did he tell you?
He knew what you were going to do. Yeah, he is the epitome of a player that makes everybody around him better, right? Because he'll pull in a guy or 2 or 3 and then lay the puck out to where you have space. He's always space for the guys around him. It's not just that, the guy was open, he passed it to him. It was, he timed the game or would slow it down. Here that Gretzky would slow the game down. Those great players, they're seeing the game 2, 3, 5 steps ahead. And if I do this, that team's going to do that, and then I'm going to have this open, and then, my player that I'm playing with, he would know my tendencies more than my own. He was just that cerebral. It wasn't just the hands. The hands were awesome. But it was the brain, and then the physical talent. He if you looked at, he looked like a school teacher in the locker room with his shirt off. He was not the biggest guy out there, but he just had such a mind for hockey, and like I said, just made everybody around him better.
Yeah, he also I think Brett Hull scored 86 goals because of Adam Oates.
Well, I guess the funny, well, not funny, is the interesting thing with Oatesy is he had the worst stick I've ever seen in the history of hockey, and we'd borrow it in practice just to see if we could do anything with it. It was like using a driver out of your bag. It was like he'd cut the blade so it was like shorter than the average blade. It was almost straight, and it was like an inch thick.
Oh.
It was like a club. And for whatever reason, he liked it because it was so dead when the puck hit it, it wouldn't bounce away. So if you ever watch a puck comes to him, he just handled everything, and it sat right on the blade. He didn't have the best shot at anybody, but I don't know. He made magic with the worst stick I've ever seen.
I think I've seen one of his sticks on the internet, but I wasn't sure if that was legitimately that size, and it was. I asked the guy, "Is this really like that, or did you cut it?" He said, "No, it's actually game used." Like I was asking questions.
Yeah, amazing. Yep.
Yeah, and so your name is Heinze, and noticed that you wore 57 later in your career, not in the beginning. Can you tell us why that happened, and why weren't you able to use 57?
Well, simple reason is the Bruins wouldn't let me. But the long story is I had a younger, when I was Pee-wee, Squirt Mike, whatever it was, a coach of mine, Mr. Pascucci, Scooch, was like, you got to wear 57, when you make it to the NHL, obviously we're just joking. I'm like, okay, Mr. Scooch, when I make it. But you finally make it, right? And as I mentioned, we joined after the Olympic team, a bunch of us. I had number 45, and Juno had number 49. Donato had number 46. You're given the number. They had so many guys come through that year that we got high numbers. Mm-hmm. But back in that day, nobody was supposed to be above number 30. That was the goalie had the highest number, and the rest of the team stayed under that. Yeah. So when I come back the next year, they put 23 in my locker, and I'm like, all right, I guess that means I'm on the team. I got a low number. Great. You're just happy to be there, right? I'm not ready to rock the boat and say, hey, let me be a showboat. That just wasn't Boston's style. So I think a year or two later, after I joined the team, they retired Phil Esposito's number, and so Ray Bourque becomes 77, which is, okay, all right, well, Ray's wearing a higher number now. Guys around the league are wearing higher numbers, so I got up the gumption to at least ask my trainer, the equipment trainer. Doc, this guy was a legend, Doc Flaherty. He was awesome. And I said, Doc, next year, at the end of the year, I said, next year I'd like to wear 57. Can you run that up the flagpole to Harry Sinden? And now I wouldn't, in my wildest dreams, talk face-to-face to Harry Sinden because I was scared out of my mind. Harry, he was a tough nut. Yeah. And so and Doc brought it up to him, and he came back to me. He's like, no high numbers. And I, begged and pleaded with Doc, and he's just like, no, can't do it. And so that was it for Boston. They just, they don't play that way, or they don't, no showboats or whatever. Yeah. Well, but when I got picked up an expansion for Columbus, and I went to the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're a new franchise. They're looking for any reason to market the team. And, and I said, I want to wear this 57. And they're like, yes, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Let's get you that. So I got there, and then my agent tried to get contact with the Heinze company, but nothing ever came of that. No promotions, no commercials, but it would have been nice.
He didn't pitch it right. You should have had.
Exactly.
I was telling you this the other day. It's a kid gives you a French fry from the stands, right? You're on the bench. So it has ketchup on it. You eat it. You go on the ice. Ref thinks it's a blood on the mouth. You draw a 2-minute power play.
Perfect. I think it'd show great. Maybe they'll have me back. Although there's a lot of 57s out there now, but yeah.
Yeah. Joe Thornton was on your team, and what really happened? Are you allowed to talk about this, about the trade? Why did they trade Joe Thornton in Boston? What was the real reason? Nobody.
So I wish I knew. And as we're talking about guys like Oatsy and Cam and Ray Bourque, of these greatest. I mean, Joe grew into that, but when I played with Joe, he was a young rookie, and I left there in 2000. So Joe was just sort of coming into his own as I set sail to other places. Mm-hmm. And at the end of my career, I had to retire from concussion. So I was out of hockey for about 5 years because the difficulty it gave me. So I'm not privy to how it went down there in Boston. If I knew, maybe I could tell you, maybe I couldn't. I don't even really know, but I don't know. I really don't. All I know about Joe is, I guess if we got time, we want to keep this short. But so Joe Thornton comes to the Bruins. He's a rookie, if you remember back then. Yeah. Sergei Samsonov got drafted 8th overall the same year to the Bruins.
Yes.
So Sergey and Joe both come to training camp. We have Pat Burns as a coach, and Burns, we're here, and he's upset because Joe's not ready. But Sergey was. So Burnsy's playing a ton out of Sergey, and he did great, and he won Rookie of the Year. Sergey did. Yeah. But Joe was sort of riding pine, and as mean of a gun he could be, I think he was right. And so I'm seeing the sports psychologist at the time. I'm mid-20s. I'm trying to figure out how to get, that next level, and it's all mental with me. I'm all stressed out, and I'm trying too hard, and the puck's just not going in. So I'm spending a fair amount of time with the sports psychologist to try to meditate and focus and all this stuff. Same time, they got Joe Thornton there, and now the therapist, who's this awesome guy, genius, and he's coming to me about halfway through the season. He's like, "Hey, Heinze, how do we get to Joe?" I'm like, what are you talking about, Fred? He says, it's like he's going to the circus every day. We can't get him too fired up. He just doesn't have that switch. And I'm like, I don't know. I wish I had a little more Joe Thornton in me because I'm losing my mind. I'm so stressed out. But Joe was just always that kid, or a kid back then when I played with him, that nothing bothered him.
Really?
Which is a thing that probably has helped him play these 25 years or whatever, how long he's played, is because he's a great and wonderful guy, but he doesn't get too upset about anything, right?
Yes.
But the flip side of that is, can you flip that switch for the playoffs, where those guys, those greats, those Messiers, those, Gretzky's, flip that switch and become a bigger and even more of an animal in the playoffs? Yeah. I don't know if that could contribute to why Joe was let go, and maybe, and I if Joe listens to this, Joe, I love you, man. He's one of the most wonderful humans I've ever played with, but maybe that was the thought of the knocker, or why they got rid of him, because he hadn't won. So I don't know.
He made a great career out of it, and he's an incredible player. So that's just kind of why I'm wondering. Really don't know the insights, and even asked my friend. Yeah.
And knowing Joe, it probably wasn't a controversy. It just was maybe, let's get a change. It hasn't worked yet, Joe. Maybe you need, they were nice enough to let Borky go that last year to go and win it with the Avalanche.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. How tough were the practices in Boston with the checking? Like, you had Brian Sutter as your coach, and how tough, demand were the Bruins practices? Like,
it was the toughest I've done ever, and in anything then or since. Wow. Sudsy was so intense that we were doing 3-hour practices in February. And nowadays, if you talk to teams, you get into February, March, you're down to an hour and a half, maybe. If you got a long week off or whatever, maybe a little longer. We would hear stories of Edmonton at the same time. They're down to a half an hour, no equipment, just get out there for a skate around. And we're doing 3-hour, full contact.
Wow.
Go after it. 3-on-3 down low type of drills without your stick. And Tommy McVie was the assistant coach. And and one of those years, I think we were second in points just behind Pittsburgh, but we bowed out in the first round. Wow. Because we were in an awesome shape, but by the time 80 games come around and you're working that hard, I don't know. I mean, you'd have to ask Brian about it on his mentality, but we were awesome in our defensive zone. There was a lot of strengths of our team, but possibly we ran out of gas by the end. But it was one funny. So we're doing line drills. We're just doing regroups and back and forth. And Stevie Leach, who's one of the funniest humans I ever played with, but he's a drill buster, if you know what I mean. Like, he's the guy that just always screwed up the drills, right? So we're going. And Sudsy was legendary about getting angry, and he would, I'd never seen a human being get this fired up. And that's, one of his strengths of getting the most out of his players, because we were scared of him. Yeah. Or, you come in between periods, and if you got a good stick that you like, you hide it, because he'd come in and scream at us, and he'd grab the closest thing, and if it was your stick, he'd smash it off the wall and bust the stick. Well, in practice, Leachy screws up the drill, and Sudsy doesn't have anything to throw. So the closest thing to him was Joey Juneau. He picks up Joey Juneau and throws him into the fray of Leachy flying by with the puck, and it's an absolute yard sale in the middle of the, we're thinking these guys are dead because, Leachy didn't see it coming. Joey didn't know it was going to happen. And it was just, and Sudsy didn't skip a beat. He just kept yelling and screaming and dropping F-bombs. And like, you guys quit screwing up these drills. Yeah, so he was pretty darn intense, yeah.
I'm asking that question. I don't know anything about him, but looking at him on the bench, I figured I have to ask you how tough it was.
Oh, I mean, it goes on. I took a Ray Bork clearing slap shot off the nose on the bench because I wasn't paying attention. I go to grab my nose, and I missed it because it was on the side of my face, and Sudsy's like, no, you can't leave the bench. That shows weakness.
Wow. Oh, man.
You sit right there till we go in between periods, or actually get out there and play with it, and you go in and get fixed in between periods because you couldn't show weakness. It was just so old school. It was awesome. He was a man's man.
Yeah, that's an old school coach for sure. You don't see that today.
No.
Even close. Any preparations before a game that you did different than other players? Any superstitions?
Early on in my career, it's a ton of superstitions. And then I realized, and I mentioned the sports psychologist earlier, I got so in my head that if something went wrong, I'm like, well, I'm going to have a bad game tonight. Because I didn't eat cereal at the right time in the morning. I got so much that then finally, somewhere in the middle of my career, I'm like, no more. My only superstition is not to have a superstition. Mm-hmm. And so I try to build it into more of a routine. And I'm sure you talk to any NHLer, you just have to have a general routine of your day. When do you eat? When do you, this sort of stuff. Yeah. And I got real into meditation. And so game days were filled with, well, the greatest thing of playing NHL hockey is you nap every single day, or at least I did. You get to have a nap. Your pregame nap was the highlight of the day. So you have if it's an 8 o'clock game or 7 or 7:30 at night, so you have your pregame skates, and then you come home for your lunch, and then pregame nap. So I'd meditate for at least a half an hour before I lay down for a nap, and then I'd wake up and I'd meditate and visualize for another half an hour. Then I'd get to the rink usually about an hour before everybody else. I was one of those early arrivals. Mm-hmm. Do some more meditation, a lot of stretching, a lot of warming up on the bike. And I guess I'm remembering more later in my career because the older you get, the more of that you need to do. Yes. Just getting the body and the mind going. So nothing really crazy out of the ordinary. Maybe back then it was a little crazier, the meditation and stuff, but guys today I'm sure are doing a lot of that. Yeah. But yeah, it was, it ain't easy. 82 games to get up for every single one and be prepared to play it at that level. Yeah, you got to get some sort of routine going so your body and your mind knows it's got to get in there for a bit of a war every night.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Were there any coaches that were very strict as far as curfew goes on game nights?
Back then it was, I didn't ever have one that, no, was strict on the curfew. That's the thing. You come in with a hammer, with that type of, treating the players like, I don't want to say babies, but like children. It's like it was expected you'd be in, and it was more, you take care of yourself because you're smart enough to know how lucky you are to have this job, and if you're not performing, you're gone. Mm-hmm. Right? So, and I think more back to Burnsy and Sutter that they just expected everything of you, and if you didn't show up that morning for practice and do as well as anybody else or in the game, then you would be sent to the minors or traded. It's wow. So it wasn't a lot of that. They weren't in your business or trying to control you, because I think then you can have a rebellion on your hand, right? You get those teams where they just rebel on the coach. It's that fine line of they're the boss, but we're also adults and, doing our thing, families and whatnot. Yeah. Maybe a little more for rookies or younger guys, but
not the veterans.
Yeah.
How many career games does a player have to play to be considered one of the boys? Like if a guy,
That's an interesting thought. First, it depends on the guy, right? Some guys just never figure it out. And actually, they don't, and they're not in the league that long. But you got to go through your rookie spell. Nobody's part of the boy. I wasn't one of. because I didn't start till I'm 22. I'd say by 25, yeah, I'm in the mix. I can, sit in the back of the bus and claim a seat and whatnot, by your mid 20s. But certainly a rookie isn't going to walk back to the back of the bus and sit where Ray usually sits, right? So there is that whole hierarchy. I can't say an exact date or time, but a guy that comes in and, I'm sure Connor McDavid was one of the boys, or Sid Crosby was one of the boys a little sooner than most, right? They're captain already at 19 or 20. But some guys, it's you can be one of the boys with your fourth line or first line, but as long as you carry yourself the right way. Yeah. But I'd say at least a season, if not two, probably on average 3 or 4 before you're, one of the go-to guys and one of the guys who's inviting kids out to dinner and that sort of thing, and more of a leader type aspect.
Nice. How many career games did you play overall?
Oh my goodness! Somebody's got to Google that.
Approximately, would you say
I'm 700 or 800. I don't know. I was injured way too much.
Yeah. So the next question I want to ask you: what kind of sticks did you use?
I used whatever Ray Bourque was using when I was in Boston, because you got better service that way. I tried a bunch early on, a Victoriaville, I believe. I had one of the 2 pieces from Easton, the old ones where you'd heat up the metal and take the blade out and switch those. But I think by my second or third season, somebody just said to me, use Sherwoods. That's what Ray uses. The representative from Sherwood is in our locker room every week to take care of Ray. Just find a Sherwood that you like and use that. And I, obviously I'm a righty. Ray is a lefty. I didn't use his stick, but I used the 9950. What is it? Carbon steel or carbon something.
They're stiff.
Yeah, stiff. I still have a few in my garage. I picked those things up. It's like using a 2x4. But I just got a curve I liked, and it was funny. But the old wooden sticks. You'd get a dozen, and maybe 3 of them had that nice pop. And you try to hold on to those ones that, or you score a goal with them, and all of a sudden they were magic. But Ray would get a dozen in, and he'd test them. And he'd keep the 3 out of the dozen and send 9 back to the company and send me, and get more sent. I didn't have that option. So
picky.
Through Boston, I used the Sherwoods, and then teammate Sean Bates I was skating with him over the summer when I left Boston, and he's like, "Hey, check this stick out." And I took one shot with the Easton Synergy, the first one piece.
Oh yeah.
And the puck flipping exploded off my blade. I'm like, that was unbelievable. What is this? And he's like, oh, yeah, this is a new whatever one piece. And so then I found a righty. Actually, I copied Stevie Eisman's pattern, and then that's what I used for the rest of my career was the Easton Synergy.
Was it a heel curve that you used?
It was sort of full through the blade. It started heel. It was just a gradual. I'd get in trouble because back then they had a illegal curve. I don't even know if they call the illegal curve anymore. Yeah, I'm not sure. But we were not allowed. So they, that was right around the Marty McSorley era where he did get called. Yeah. And so I was always afraid to put a little too much on there. And this one had just enough. And you had to. It wasn't as ugly as Oates's, but it wasn't as beautiful as some of these other ones that you see now. But it was just your basic, little bit of heel. Yeah. And you didn't care about flex too much, did you? I would call it was a 110 or something like that. Oh, that's different. Yeah, there wasn't a flex in the wood ones, obviously, but I believe on there 110 or 120. Yeah, it was just it was a piece of steel, but I don't know. It was better than the wood stuff. Yeah. Did you ever keep any of your jerseys? I have one from every team, I think, all the way back to high school. Those are awesome. Things you hold on to. They're in a pile somewhere in a closet around here. It's not like I have one displayed. My brother framed my Olympic jersey, so I have that hanging up in the garage. But other than that, they're all in some box somewhere. That's collecting dust. Maybe my kids will want them someday. Oh, I'm sure they will. That's awesome. Did any of the players ever get paid for using sticks like Bourque? Did you ever hear that he was getting anything for using Sherwood? I don't No, I mean, beyond the unbelievable service he had, you never really heard much about that, about guys getting paid. You know, they didn't have the Nike deals and all that. And it's sort of the whole salary and all that, what each guy made, that was just sort of coming out early in my career, where you don't really ask what the guy next to you is making. And so it wasn't one of those where it was bantered about the locker room.
Yes.
One time I get paid a few bucks for the season. I think it was like $2,000 or $3,000 to wear some gloves for a season, and I hated the darn things. It was one of my worst years in the league, and it was like I probably just cost myself $1 million because I used these gloves that I didn't like. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm sure some of the guys, like Crosby or McDavid, are getting some dollars from people, but I don't know how far down the totem pole that goes.
Yeah. That's I'm just wondering, because I do hear of deals, but back then you didn't hear of much. I didn't hear of anything, but I was just wondering if you knew of anything like that.
No, nothing when I played.
Yeah. Any advice for kids playing the game?
Have fun. We all end up in beer league. No matter what. My son's playing now, and he is a pretty good little player, but we are in California, so I'm wondering where he's going to end up. But I just try and keep telling him to have fun. And he's working hard while having fun. That way you can have some longevity, maybe a little bit like Joe Thornton. Yeah. Anybody can work hard, but if you're angry and working hard, you're gonna burn out pretty quick. But just enjoy it. Yeah, I'm joking that everybody ends up in beer league, because we do. I'm playing pickup with my buddies. So you're going to go to where you get to. You might as well enjoy the ride and have fun with it. There's no way you're going to have success if you're not having fun. Sure. And you might as well have fun anyways while you're there, because it doesn't, that competitive contact checking hockey, so for some kids doesn't go past high school. So you might as well enjoy it while you're doing it. It's the best game on earth. You might as well have fun at it.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice. That's gold. Thank you for that. Thank you. If you were commissioner of the NHL, what rules would you add or change? Like, that's something that I see rules changing all the time.
I know, and there's always little tweaks, and I guess I'm such an old school guy. Like, before they started doing the Michigan, I was like, they should ban that move. And now I see them do it, and I'm like, that's awesome. Or when they changed the red line, I'm like, no, we always played with the two-line offsides. Why would they take the red line out? That's part of hockey.
Yes.
Now I'm like, why did we ever have the red line in? So I guess I'm a little behind the curve on what I want. I kind of like it the way it is. Whenever I'm watching it, it is better hockey now than I've ever seen. What they can do, with the puck and at speed. Certainly the equipment helps, but the kids, it's Darwinism, right? Everybody's just getting bigger, faster, stronger, quicker responses and whatnot. So if there was any rule to open it up more and let those talented players play, but I can't think of the one that would do that. Because I still like the fights and the solid and the hitting of hockey. Yeah. And you watch the old in the 90s, the guy would just put the pitchfork in you to cover you in front of the net and tackle you, and that was just part of the game.
Yes.
And so I miss some of that, but it's not as good a hockey. So any possible way that they could, just open it up more without taking all of the other side out of it, is better for the game. But it's as good as it's ever been right now with the speed and the talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And the money's better. I mean, the money's a lot better than it used to be.
Yeah. I think I was involved in a lockout and a strike and all. Right when I joined the league, we went on strike, and I'm like, I don't know about this. Yeah. But yeah, the union, the NHLPA, which is the players' union, has really, really done a great job to protect the guys. Doing more and more for us old, washed-up alumni and things. So there's a real family and a community of current to retired, and the PA, the NHLPA, has really done a great job protecting the current players and helping the older players and fighting against the ownership. I mean, the ownership's great, and they got to make their money, and the players, sacrificing a lot to be part of it. So I think everybody's getting compensated fairly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Steve, I want to thank you so much for coming on and talking to me with this interview.
Yeah, thank you. It's always fun to talk hockey anytime.
Yeah, thank you. It's I just want to bring back hockey history. A lot of the new generations forget about what's happened in the past, and it's kind of interesting to bring back stories we never heard about. All that.
Right, right. Yeah, keep it alive. Yep.
Yeah. All the best success to you and your team, and you're coaching the kids. You're doing awesome for the kids. Thank you
All
for
right, I
that.
appreciate it.
You got
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.